to Joint Committee on Strategic Planning and Transport. So without further, I think, is this your first meeting? So yeah, welcome to the committee. So item 1, minutes of 8th of September. Has everybody approved those? Everybody happy? Yep. Okay, thank you. Item 2, apologies for absence.
Okay, so we have Councillor Rain on other city business, Councillor Ogle on other, and Councillor Callissy as well on other. I've heard nothing from Councillor Carr.
Right, and Councillor Cotty, I think, is subbing for Councillor Ogle. Okay, thank you for that. Declarations of interest. Does anybody have any interest to declare? Silence. Thank you very much indeed. So I'll just switch my phone off. Sorry about that. Well, possibly. Or £4.99 anyway. Right, so let's go straight on to item 4, the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act update.
Okay, yes, thank you, Chair. I'll introduce this. I do have a couple of slides to help illustrate some of the more significant elements of the Act. It received royal assent on the 26th of October, but it will take time for the secondary legislation and various regulations to be drafted, consulted on, and then enacted. So we're not expecting anything to change until next year. Have the next slide, please. This will have serious implications for local planning authorities, in the City Council in terms of the local planning authority and the County Council in terms of its minerals and waste plan. So it's very relevant to the work of this committee. And I was just going to run through some of the more strategic elements that are being introduced through the Act. So next slide, please. Design codes. All local planning authorities will require a design code to cover their whole area, and these can be more specific in certain areas, and national guidance will apply if one is not prepared or adopted. Locally, both Gedling Borough Council and the East Midlands Development Company are pilots for this and have developed design codes for their areas. I am assuming, although it's not been stated yet, that any minerals or waste development have to conform to the design code of the local planning authority, and the county wouldn't have to prepare one. Next slide, please. Every council will have to introduce an infrastructure levy to replace the current regimes of community infrastructure levy in section 106. And although it's a national scheme, the rates and thresholds will be set locally by the local planning authority. And one of the key elements of thinking behind the infrastructure levy, it should produce at least as much and preferably more on-site affordable housing than the current scheme. So we shall see how that pans out. They will be subject to examination, as are CILs currently, and to inform the public and others as to what the infrastructure levy will be used for. Local planning authorities will have to prepare an infrastructure delivery strategy, so that's another document that will sit alongside the other statutory local planning documents that we have to prepare. Next slide, please. There'll be a set of new national development management policies. These are currently set through local planning authorities' local plans. So these will effectively supersede the current set of local policies that we have in both the Minerals and Waste Local Plan and the Nottingham City Local Plan. So each local planning authority will prepare one plan covering only locally specific matters, because all other matters should be dealt with through these NDMPs, as they're known. So those sorts of local matters will be things like site allocations, infrastructure requirements, good design principles, those sorts of things that are unique to individual local authorities. The the sorts of things that would be covered by the national development management policies are things that are more generic across the country. So things like your approach to heritage assets, greenbelt, and the like. And local plans will not be allowed to repeat those national policies. The national policies will be subject to consultation, but once they are in, the national planning policy framework will be much slimmed down and will focus solely on local plan making because obviously the matters that it currently advises on will be the subject of NDMPs. The issue about the single local plan is interesting. We'll have to see how that pans out because currently Nottingham City Council has a joint waste plan with the county, which you'll be familiar with, but it also has its own local plan. And we would be very, very keen to continue that joint waste planning going forward if we're able to. So next slide, please. The duty to cooperate is something that was brought in 2010 to replace regional spatial strategies, and that is now in turn due to be replaced by what's been called a new alignment test. Now we don't know what the new alignment test is yet. There are no details, but we're told it will be subject to consultation, and it will still cover those strategic matters that cross borders. And it will be up to the inspectorate through gateway checks, which will be part of the new plan making process, earlier involvement of the inspectorate, and they will pick up the soundness issues earlier in the process so that local plans don't end up at local plan examinations then having failed the alignment test. Next slide, please. And one interesting element of the Act is that groups of local planning authorities will be able to prepare spatial development strategies which are effectively high-level strategic plans covering more than one local authority. This only applies to the new style county combined authorities, of which of course we will be part, because the previous combined authorities have a different way of preparing spatial development strategies. They can be done by the combined authority itself. And the reason the government has inserted this provision is to ensure that where necessary there can still be consistent strategic planning policies across broad and more meaningful functional geographies, and that those cross-cutting issues like transport, employment, etc. can be covered holistically. Next slide, please. And that's it. So happy to try and answer any questions, but there are still a lot of uncertainties around how the Act's provisions will be implemented.
Thanks for that. I just got one question. When in one of the earlier slides you were talking about heritage and greenbelt, and then you said local plans will not be allowed to repeat them. I don't understand what that means.
But the government is going to publish a set of national development management policies. They will sit alongside the NPPF, and they will cover every local planning authority area and effectively replace those policies in current local plans. The government thinks will make local plans quicker to prepare because we won't have to argue the toss about those national policies at a local planning examination, and will also give consistency across the country. So the local plan itself will no longer have to have policies on heritage and greenbelt because they'll be part of the national set of policies, and it will only be those matters that are truly locally distinctive that will fit within your policy framework of your local plan.
But it's just this bit about not allowed to repeat. Surely, if they're going to be using those guidelines anyway, and if it's not shown anywhere in the local planning authority policies, I would have thought that'd give rise to a lot of the public querying it and saying, why aren't you protecting this, why aren't you protecting that, and just to then have the answer, oh well, it's in national policy. That'll still give rise to people saying, well, where and what does it say, etc. I would have thought it'd give rise to an awful lot of confusion and unnecessary repetition, because I would have thought that having not been allowed to repeat it, it would just mean you'd have to spend more time explaining it rather than it being set out there in a local plan.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion. Councillor Creamer.
Yeah, just a little bit concerned very early on, but the actual sill and the 106 going. I mean, it's a single tier authority, it's a city. It's not too bad, not a great difference. But for us, it makes a big difference in the respect that it's the district councils that collect, set the sills and the 106. So I'm wondering where that leaves us. And when even with the district councils, when a sill is set and that is met, and it's usually bigger infrastructure projects when it comes to districts. So when they're met, will the operators, contractors say, well, you don't need a sill? Or do we have to spend extra time and money at district level setting a new sill every year as we're completing it? Because we don't have to with the 106. When a development happens, we want what's in that development. And I'm a bit concerned about this sill will work, particularly as a two-tier authority.
Chair, there has been a lot of scepticism about the introduction of infrastructure levy. It's probably the most contentious part of the Levelling Up Act. And before it was enacted, there was a cross-industry letter to the Secretary of State effectively asking him not to introduce the infrastructure levy. However, he has decided to introduce it. And so his intention is that this will happen over a number of years, with some pilot authorities going first to try and tease out some of these more difficult issues first, so that when once the principles are established, it should become easier to implement. Having said that, there are, as the industry as a whole has a degree of scepticism about how it might work.
So I've got very great scepticism about the sill and the utter just replacement of the 106, because it's creating it's going to create new work in the future as it's absolutely continually updated. So I think it's a retrograde spec, but that's just me.
Okay.
Yeah, we celebrated the opening of a new purpose-built for rent building on Queen's Road this week, and I think it's quite a striking building. I don't know if people have seen it. It's got 3 wings that come out towards the pavement. They've got rounded corners. They've got quite distinctive brickwork, and it's built very much in the style of late Venetian architecture that dominated that part of Nottingham 100 or so years ago. And it was because of the strength that we had in planning that when the what do they call it, the quantity surveying, the cost surveying, when somebody comes in and says, let's try and get the building cheaper, we have the strength to actually say between us and the architects, because we've got policy, because we've got people who have a passion for how the city should look, and we employ them to do that. We defended against all those kind of measures that might have made the building look worse. So I think there's a moment you have to take a moment and celebrate what planning does. And my worry about this kind of stuff is when it says, well, the driver here is that we want to make it easier for a uniform policy across the country and for it to cost less. Now, my question to Matt is, how much work for a local authority do these changes bring that save you time and money? My worry is that it's that thing about it's centralisation again. Now, maybe there's advantages in standards, but my other worry about this is that this is going to come from a framework, a group of people who are going to say, well, we don't want thresholds, we don't want standards, they want cheaper. So one of the things that we would have been wanting for is the ability to put policies in that allowed us to do more in terms of air quality, air management, heat management, energy management, which is absolutely the thing we're going to have to do next. I think we're limited on how much we're allowed to do at the moment, but I'm feeling that we actually will lose even more power with this kind of centralisation. So, Matt, is this seen as centralisation? And does it actually save you any time and effort in the work that you and your colleagues do?
Right. In terms of centralisation, there are two views on that. There is the view that it is centralisation, that these policies will not get the scrutiny and challenge that they might need. And there's an alternate view that these policies are simply repeated throughout every local authority's plan in the country. So why not have that set of national policies, have that consistency across the country? In terms of the time taken on these policies, they do take time. You will have discussions with, for instance, the Environment Agency about your flooding policy. But what causes the most amount of delay and time is always the site allocations. So the amount of time they will save is dwarfed by the amount of time you spend on other matters that you will still be including in your local plan. So I think the amount of time it will save, from my experience of preparing local plans over many years, is that it's not going to be hugely significant.
Okay, thank you for that. Steve?
Just like to come in to just comment on Councillor Creamer's concerns about operating the infrastructure levy in a two-tier area. There was efforts being made during the development of the bill that counties should have a statutory role, or district councils in a two-tier area should have a statutory responsibility to set the levy in conjunction with the counties. That wasn't embodied in the final act, so it is somewhat uncertain. I think, as Matt said, the government seems to have backtracked a bit, and they're talking about introducing this through what they call a test and learn approach, which means they're going to do some pilots first before making it a mandatory thing nationwide. But there's no timescales on that yet. It seems to have been pushed to the back of the priorities for introducing the changes. So we wait and see. But I can certainly testify that in Nottinghamshire, where councils have an infrastructure levy through the SIL, Community Infrastructure Levy, from a county perspective, we've only drawn on a handful of projects for funding over a 10-year period. And don't forget, Newark was the first council in the country to introduce it, and we've only been able to see one contribution from Newark so far. And last year, we were actually just reporting this to our council. We collected about £6 to £7 million worth of Section 106 money, and we spent that equivalent, and we're currently holding £19 million of Section 106. Mainly because most councils haven't introduced a levy and prefer the 106, and developers certainly prefer to keep control of matters through a 106 regime and have the flexibility and it gives us the assurance, because the county is a signatory to many of the 106s, so we have a stake in that, whereas in the levy we would not have a stake at all. And we'd have to simply go around with the cap in hand, in a sense, to seek funding.
Yes, Hans appreciated that. That's quite significant, actually. Crikey. Right. Okay. No other comments. So we're just noting that. I assume we're all happy to note all that. Let's move on to mineral and waste matters and the progress on the local plan. Stephen?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The report before you provides just an update where we are with mineral and waste matters. In terms of mineral planning work, there's no need to update our mineral plan at the moment. There's a note here about our current position regarding aggregates, that's sand and gravel, and the sales of sand and gravel across the county that we have to report on each year. That is a small increase, which we're actually just reporting on sales in 2022 because of the time lag in collecting the data. So there is a small increase compared to 2021, but the rise isn't significant. And as a result, the sales are still below the levels that were assumed in the mineral plan. So effectively, the mineral plan is based upon a higher rate of development, so continues to still be an appropriate basis for planning. There is no current news on the expected submission of a planning application for mineral extraction at Barton in Fabis. Obviously, this is a site which is close to the city boundary, and there's a major allocation in the minerals plan. We have issued a scoping report, a response to their scoping report on an application, but not received that application just yet. So in terms of the waste plan, which is of more moment in terms of work, both councils have now published a joint waste plan. A final version of the plan went out on public deposit in September and October, and we received a number of representations, approximately 172 in total, and actually a fair number of these were actually in support of the plan, 52, which is 40% odd, which is actually quite high for a local plan, in fact. We are now planning to submit the plan for examination, and in fact the county council, because of our sequence of meetings, we took a report to last week's council meeting, and that was supported. We're now waiting for the city council to take a similar decision in the new year, and we'll be submitting the plan for examination thereafter, hoping to get the plan adopted, if we can, by the end of 2024. But obviously that is outside our control to some degree, because it depends on the planning inspectorate's programme and availability of inspectors. So, and I finally just like to comment on the visit we made for the committee, members of the committee, and also Councillor Condola came along 2 weeks ago today to visit two waste facilities in Colwick. We went to Biodynamic and Enver, who were sit almost side by side, right at the end of the Colwick industrial estate, where they can't be a nuisance to anybody else.
Hopefully.
And this was absolutely fascinating. I hope the members found it fascinating. I certainly did. Certainly Biodynamic, who process food waste and turn it into energy and fertiliser, and then Enver processing a lot of commercial waste, a lot from the universities across the region. So we saw all the detail, and we smelt things that we've possibly never smelt before, but it was a very helpful visit to open our eyes to what goes on behind the waste processing. So hope members enjoyed it.
Thanks for that. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I thought the visit was very interesting, and the immense investment that's gone into the biodynamics site was just phenomenal. Just multi-millions of pounds of equipment and apparatus there. It was amazing, and I hadn't realised how big the Enver premises were. They were just vast, far bigger than I'd envisaged. So that was fascinating. I think in terms of the mineral waste going for examination, etc., or approval, then to a certain extent this is a box ticking exercise as it progresses through the the system, isn't it? Jim?
Yeah, just to agree with that point, I didn't realise that the bioplant was actually the biggest in the UK. So, yeah, I mean, I was aware of the plant there, I was aware of Edinburgh, because it's not far from where I live, actually, but the size of Edinburgh I wasn't aware of. It's a lot bigger than what I actually thought it was. And the actual smell from the bioplant, not that bad at all. I mean, it was parts of Edinburgh where they were processing stuff, but we had to use the face mask, but yeah, it was fascinating. And the amount of work they do and the amount of work they're trying to get, even keeping it local, getting rid of their scrap metal to Atkins, forgot the name of that, just down the road in Colin. Yeah, so trying to keep everything local as well.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Right.
Well, I'm really sorry I missed the chat. I don't know what's happened there. I started that. Do you get a sense on whether they're still distracted by the lack of direction on whether plans
Oh,
sorry.
did
you get a sense of wherever we're coming from, where we are on getting glass collected separately, more locally, because they were holding some of their investment back on waiting for a decision on that. So I wonder if you got a sense of anything on that. And yeah, I'm a bit frustrated. I've missed the trip. I don't know what happened.
yeah, it was quite fascinating. Stephen, a glass?
Yeah, we discussed a lot. They were keen to know our opinion on, the way that the government and local authorities may be responding in future to separate collections and so forth. It's interesting. Although they collect commercial, much of it is like household because they're collecting from halls of residence and a lot of students stuff and we were talking about what it takes to get people to separate waste and recycle it in the first place, because a lot of their effort seems to be in not commingling, but separating that out at the point of in their operation. So a lot of it is hand. It's not. Some of it is mechanised, but a lot of it seems to be based on hand picking. A lot of manual labour involved as well. I think they're keen that clearly things are separated further upstream in terms of where the waste is generated in households and commercial enterprises, and it was about what it will take to get that to happen. It's not just about the ability to do it and the collection, but making the users, and particularly students with a big student population, actually do it. So you can invest so much in technology and facilities, but you also need the behavioural change for people to not to just put their rubbish in the right bin. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So they actually, as a company, have a dedicated officer per employee to work with the universities to try to get those behaviours changed. So as a waste processing company, they're doing what we as a county council do in our campaigns, and obviously the city does as well, to try to make that change happen. So it's about psychology as well as it is about facility.
I think it's certainly we've seen the amount of investment in the infrastructure of the dealing with the waste, and so you're right. It's up to everybody to try and communicate and get the public to be aware of what they can do to be part of recycling, etc., and reusing. So it is absolutely a public communication project that we need. Everybody, doesn't matter whether you're collection, disposal, whatever organisation you are, we all need to be contributing to improving that message, because other countries are far ahead of us, I think, in terms of the public acceptance in contributing to recycling. Sam?
Thank you, Chair. Really interesting to hear about the processing plants down in Collick, and I'm sure, like my colleague, Councillor Edwards, I'd have loved to have been on that trip because I'd have found it really interesting. Just picking up on your point around students and waste, which I think is something we've discussed on the City Council to the nth degree. I think there is a lack of understanding. I mean, as a former student at Nottingham Trent University, a lot of the onus is put on the individual students. Whereas actually, I think you've got landlords and HMOs that don't provide bins properly, and there's a misunderstanding where their responsibility lies within students and property owners. I think the universities as well, there's a lack of communication as well, the complete turnover of students in areas like Lenton or Radford. There's not the capacity as it is once you've got a family home of what normally had 3 or 4 people in it, now has 8, that massive capacity increases. So I think that is a massive issue there. But I really welcome the investment in that area, because I think one of the things we're seeing in the city is waste management being a big issue. But I think there are pockets of young people that are really championing the way in that, but there is more work to go. So I'd welcome more conversation around how we can converse with the universities and really get them on side with the support from the landlords and letting agents in the city and in the county as well.
It's the sort of conversation that's ongoing that you can't do often enough, and there's never an end to it, because younger people grow up and there's always new people coming in that need to be persuaded. So it's absolutely an ongoing, permanent, continued conversation. Mike?
It sounds like I've only gone around the domestic recycling side of Ember, I think, which is why you're talking to the scale of the site, whereas I'm talking about a couple of sheds. So I'm really sorry I've missed this trip. What I do think is there needs to be something done about some sense of standard in the way that people look after their commercial properties. I'm trying to think, do you call it caretaking when you're looking after the building? But I just think that sense of, like, I live behind a college.
You
right?
mean managing the facilities?
Yeah, managing the facilities managing. That's a better word, isn't it? Now look, I live behind the college. All the waste in the college and all the classrooms is just put into a green plastic bag, and the green plastic bags are then just chucked into the recycling thing. Now, if it is paper and plastic bottles and tins, that's okay. But if people are chucking their sarnies in and stuff like that, it fouls it. But somebody somewhere needs to have that conversation with Nottingham College to say, well, how are you going to change the way you behave? Because that's been going on, and they don't appear to be very reachable. Now, I thought I was going to hear you say they're talking to a lot of commercial sector. We've got to remember, most of our waste does come from the commercial sector. So we need there to be some kind of standard in facilities management whereby they get a grip of that, I think. So, yeah, but no, I'm kicking myself now because I think I was the one asking for the visit. Yeah, I think
we kept saying, where is Councillor Michael Edwards?
Well, did someone not want to ring me?
Yeah, every 5 minutes, Jim was saying, where is Councillor Michael Edwards?
Are you seriously ringing?
Yeah.
Well, I was the one asking for it.
Yeah, I think the comments you made were absolutely right, and it's incumbent on all collection authorities to really have conversations with the people that produce the waste. I'm talking about the communication aspect of community. Oh, well, that's incumbent upon the City Council to reinstate it then, isn't it? But, I'm sure you'll be able to find the money from somewhere. Stephen?
I think there is a bit of a gap here in influencing the commercial sector, because obviously the household waste, we as a county do campaigns aimed at households, but there's nobody doing the similar for the commercial sector, in terms of campaigning influence and so forth. It seems to be a big gap, but commercial firms like Enver do have some resource, and maybe there's some opportunity for the councils and big companies like Enver to work more closely on campaigning.
We did actually in our visit that I think you might have missed it. But in our visit, we did talk to Enver about the possibility of increasing our joint promotion and having joint campaigns, etc. Because basically it's a joint message, a common message that we need to be portraying to everybody. So, yeah. Okay. So,
is there any recommendations?
I think that's a very good point. The final point we made about working more closely with Enver. Certainly, obviously, we've thanked them for the visit, but I think there might be some follow-up work that not really my team, but Nick Allen's team at the county and your waste management.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to, if we're sort of in our recommendation, apart from noting that we say and to investigate how sort of joint promotional campaigns could be improved. Yeah.
Enver are now a national firm, but they were originally based in Bulwell and have grown. So they're very much a Nottingham-based company with nationwide influence now. So it's a very much a success story for our area.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, just in the point of looking at recommendation now, I think there needs to be a consideration of the different types of commercial operations we have. As someone that worked and ran restaurants, one of which down the road in Bridgeford, there is a massive difference between what operationally can happen and does happen in the hospitality and retail sector. Those dealing with food products, completely different operational to, for example, Primark or Next or something that deals with mainly paper and cardboard. And I think there is a complete difference there. So you wouldn't be able to do some sort of overall campaign to say, recycle properly, guys. But I do welcome this recommendation. I'd like to look at work together on how we can look at sectoral campaigns for hospitality and for retail, and then for your bigger commercial industrial units as well, and office building. I think that could be really interesting to see how we can get off the ground working with Enver, and good to hear it's a Bulwell local company from the city.
Yeah, good. Okay, all right. So if we note it, but then also see if we can investigate ways of increasing our promotional campaigns in conjunction with the commercial companies. Is that okay with everybody? Yep, good, lovely, great. Let's move on then to item 6, the transport update. Mike, is it Tim and Kevin?
Okay, thank you, Chair. So hopefully this report is broadly self-explanatory. There are 4 elements to it. So first of all, there's the implications for the withdrawal of HS2 East. Then there is an element about ticket office closures, and then also about what happens under the East Midlands County Combined Authority and the funds allocated to that. And then just a little bit of an update on the Midlands mainline electrification project. So in terms of HS2, obviously the government announced back in October that they were going to withdraw the eastern leg of HS2 towards East Midlands Parkway, and then to reallocate the funds that they had allocated to that towards projects of a wider brief across the country in a document known as Network North. And I've set out in there a number of the things that they've come up with. There are a lot of things which are locally of interest to us, but I must emphasise here that actually those projects are still going to be subject to business cases and value for money judgments as to whether they will go ahead and be fully funded. So the next element, really, actually a piece of success, is the ticket office closure programme, which 750,000 objections to it. It's the largest ever single set of objections to one government consultation, which, although each railway company was actually running a separate consultation, effectively it was a single consultation across the entire rail industry, and so the government has decided to withdraw that proposal, and train operators are now having to go back to government with proposals for other ways of reducing their costs. The third element really is about the Midlands mainline electrification. Now, work is progressing, as we've said before, on the southern part, with quite a good deal of progress up as far as Wigston South Junction, just south of Leicester. So that's where the line from London and the line from Nuneaton come together. The next stage will be in spring 2024, when Network Rail will make a submission to DfT on the electrification of the line north of Wigston South, so through Leicester to Nottingham, Derby and Sheffield. And they'll make a decision on that later, as I say, in early spring 2024. It does have some interesting synergy with some of the proposals for Network North, because Network North envisaged electrification between Manchester and Sheffield via the Hope Valley, which of course shares part of that route, and make of what you can make of that what you will. And then of course there's the whole issue of £1.5 billion allocated to the East Midlands County Combined Authority, which of course the Mayor will be elected in May 2024, and I believe the enabling legislation is going through as we speak, and I think all of the authorities have agreed to it as of last week. Okay, so I'll take any questions on the paper. Kevin, of course.
Yeah, I don't know, Kevin, anything to add at all? No.
No, I'll just reiterate what Tim was saying. This is very early days in a lot of this. So, whilst it was disappointing that entered to East Council, there's some good news stories in terms of redistribution of funds and there's opportunities there, but the devil's in the detail and we're still working through trying to make sure that we get out okay.
Just a very quick one. It's strange stopping at Wigston when it's so close to Leicester, which would make sense in a major city, but that's where we are. I just wonder what's happening with the bimodals, if they're still on time, because it seems strange we're actually putting bimodal in over the next few years, and they'll electrify it to Leicester, definitely, I would say, if we don't go to Nottingham and Derby. So it just seems strange. I wonder what's happening with the bimodals time-wise.
Bimodal.
So bimodal is a train which is capable of operating on electric and diesel operations, and those trains, as I understand it, are in construction now and on test as well at the Melton Mowbray to Ruddington test. Is it Edwalton test track?
Yeah.
So
Edwalton,
that
Melton
part
Mowbray.
of the programme is on time and on budget, and I believe that the cross-country franchise is also reliant on some of the existing trains from East Midlands Railway being sent across them to provide extra capacity on their routes. So that part of it is on target. So the idea is that as soon as when the train leaves London, it'll be on electric power, but when it gets to Wigston South Junction, at the moment, it has to pull the pantograph down and switch across to a diesel engine.
I'm sure Network Rail will be coming forward with their further plans for coming further north in due course in the earliest next year. I'm sure. Mike.
Yeah, I mean, the loss of HS2 can't be underestimated. The point was, the nature of the country has changed. The rail activity in what we used to call Network South East is huge. The number of paths that are available to trains from Nottingham are small already. We needed HS2 so that we had more capacity to get in and out of London that could be ours. And what's quite bizarre reading some of these ideas that are floating around is that they overlook all of that. So the idea that we can go faster to Newark and then join East Coast Main Line. Well, East Coast Main Line is pretty darn busy already. I think there are real questions on that, but it's all a little bit designed in London and not really coming from us. I mean, I think one of the things that I found so interesting at the last meeting was we said for 14 and 18 million, there were two projects that we could have that could be built in 3 months that would take 4 minutes off the trip to Newark and 4 minutes off the trip to Grantham. And when you think about some of the concerns that we've got in the city centre, and I know it gets confused, but we are trying to prevent the air pollution getting worse in the city centre. And we think one of the most important things for us in the parts of the city centre that are now being highlighted as a possible risk is to get what we do with trains transformed. Partly because if we can get electrification to Nottingham, we don't have diesels to London standing sitting on, well, I say running idle, just running whilst they're waiting to go back out again. So that's quite an important factor for us. Also the spark effect, of course, and Leicester are campaigning on this. Leicester actually, got themselves some publicity on this. I don't know where we are at, but so we seem to be beyond Leicester in terms of pushing for it to get done. But I thought what Midland Connect said very clearly when they were here last time was Nottingham could well be 2027. Nottingham could well be electrified by 2027. They said it here in this room. So we've got to get on board with that. I got a little bit confused, therefore, whether we were in with Sheffield. I thought Sheffield was beyond us on that sort of stuff. Seems to me like we need to get a clear understanding of what these phases are and follow up with Midland Connect on what they actually said and promised. Then we need to relieve the traffic coming in from West Bridgeford via Lady Bay Bridge via Trent Bridge, and we need to relieve the traffic coming down Daleside Road. Rail can contribute on that, and it seemed to me two very clear projects there for not a lot of national money and something that can save time and make that route more attractive, and particularly for people who want to commute from Radcliffe. So I thought that was really important. What I then think is just that some of this other stuff is just wishful thinking. I mean, there's no doubt the poor mayor, the mayor's going to have more than about £1.5 billion worth of demands of work coming from us. I'll tell you now, if people want a tram system to run to the east of the city, I think that's about £750 million, and we'll be more than happy to be corrected on that. But that's the scale, I think, of what the cost of that is. Going to East Midlands Airport, these are my own figures, so we'll be absolutely more than happy to be corrected on this. That's another £750 million. And that's £750 million, for which 16 kilometres of the route is through countryside, which is absolutely the wrong thing to do with a tram system. Tram systems have to be urban, and we know where they have to go. They have to go to where they pick up people to take them off the road network. So we've got to get to the A52 East. I think Gamston is the obvious site there, but I'm being told that it's actually worth trying to take it on to Tollerton. Having to take advice on this one as well, but we've got, if we can have another bridge in across the river that supports public transport and takes people away from travelling through West Bridgeford, that is the real thing to go for. Dual it with the demand to do something to take people off Daleside Road by serving Gedling. And again, I think Gedling need to be a little bit clearer about where they really want it to go to. But again, you've got to understand, if you're coming from a Gedling perspective, tram systems work if you're taking people off at the terminus at Park and Ride. And I'm not sure that message has been got in Gedling. So I'm kind of clear that we want to go for. And the thing we've got to understand is 2034 is when the first fleet of trams that we had for 2004 when it started. That's when is the kind of threshold moment for a whole series of new systems to be in place. So I think we should be working out a process whereby we get a tram extension and the updated fleet in for 2034. I think that's the timescale we've got. The thing to be aware of on that is every major transport initiative that we've had in Nottingham, Net Phase 1, Net Phase 2, Workplace Park and Levy, all of them took 14 years. We're kind of late already, but I do think that's got to be done. I mean, I suppose my question on that is, we've got to keep the tram system going, first of all. I don't know if you can give us any advice on what the situation is with encouraging older people to continue to use it from the county. I don't know what the story is there, but perhaps you can advise us. The other thing that's really clear, though, is Nottingham, we are being slugged, because the county have had a vision. They said, right, you've got to do something about Newark, you've got to do something about all the stations on the way to Grantham. We're missing the fact that we've got a major development that's taking place in Nottingham, that what would be served by Lenton Station, what was Lenton Railway Station. The Jubilee campus, it's extraordinary what's happened at the Jubilee campus. It's incredibly transformed. So let's get a station built, call it Lenton Jubilee as a nod to the university. I think the university are on board with this already. I think the NHS are only just tumbling what's happening, because I spoke to them about it again yesterday. I think 10 million for a 2-platform station, happy to be corrected. That sense of we should be getting that, and we should be driving on that. We should be driving on the stuff that we can actually get something done about, because this other stuff is a bit too manana. So I think we should be pushing on the Newark faster travel. We should be pushing on, they want to call it the poacher line, I don't, but we should be pushing on the Grantham faster travel. We should be pushing on getting the electrification in for 2027. We should be pushing for a Lenton railway station, and we should be pushing for all the work that needs to be done to get the tram extended to the east in time for 2034. That's the kind of vision that I've got. Of course, because I'm a railwayman, so I think we think, because this is not really a decision-making thing, and our interests are too general, we don't need to declare that we're both rail workers, or were. But that sense of course, I do it all. Because in terms of tackling climate change, you've just got to get switched modes. But I'm being a moderate here, Chair, and I'm only calling for a tram system, 2 faster train networks, and electrification and a new rail station. I mean, that's what you call new Labour, really.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff we should be getting some focus on. Can we now be having the discussions between the two authorities that get some focus and say, right, now we're going to campaign and now we're going to drive, because we need it. Because there is in the back of our mind this thing that we have got to do something about cleaner air. And there's all kinds of nonsense going around about ULEZ.
So I think, if Network Rail come forward with some announcement next year, then that would hopefully address the Midlands Connect situation about electrification 2027 and all that stuff. But we've got to wait on Network Rail on that. In terms of Nottingham to Grantham, there's been a campaign. In fact, the local MP's been involved in campaigning for additional stops and anything that can help to get vehicles off the road. A, pollution, B, relieve congestion, etc., then absolutely. So, and that holds the same for Newark as well, doesn't it? Just before I bring Jim in there, Tim.
Okay, so just to answer a couple of those things there. So first of all, to say that we are meeting with DEFRA next week about air quality, and certainly it is going to be one of the things that I will emphasise at that meeting, is that without electrification there, Nottingham is going to really struggle to meet its obligations under Air Quality Management Act issues. Just to, I think, we do work quite closely on, certainly on the local transport plan, as we're preparing for the East Midlands County Combined Authority. We've been looking at basically where our policies align, and we are looking at a series of projects which will go into the pot for the mayor to consider, and so rail project will form part of that. So I think actually Kevin agrees with me. I think we're actually quite aligned in some ways on that.
Yes, it's worth noting, as you rightly point out, it's very easy to come up with corridors where you could put public transport, but to actually make them economically run, because what we want to do is build something that actually does not stack up financially. So it is finding the right locations. And again, you're right, these major projects take an awful long while to not just develop but deliver. And so we might be talking about there's a lot of money in the short term through the combined authority, but unless you've got a scheme that's actually ready to be delivered, we've probably missed that opportunity at this stage. There are things in the process, but to start something again from totally scratch, you're not going to get delivered in the next X years.
Great, Jim.
Yeah, that's part of the answer. I was thinking that going along with Mike that we actually put it down as priority environmentally, and that we consider it environment to actually increase rail, as you say, declaration on railwaymen as well. But I think it is the right way to go, and actually to put down that we are putting that pressure on now, as Mike's already said, 14 years to get plans done, or at least 8 years. But now is the time we've got to put down some place and say, look, this is where we want to go, this is direction, and put it on the new mayor's desk. This is what we want. Granted, we haven't got a plan yet, but this is the direction we're going. This is what we actually want. We want better communication, better facilities, better access to alternate, and again, environmentally friendly. So I'd go along with that. I mean, I would like this committee. I'm not 100% certain, to be fair, whether this committee is going to exist after the mayor is here, or there will be a bigger one, including Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. I would certainly like this committee to continue to exist, because I think it does useful work. It gets the points of view across from the city, which is unity authority, and between us, which is not unitary, and we iron out our differences quite nicely. I think this is a really useful committee to have, and I would like to see it go under the new mayoral system. So there's a suggestion and a rant.
Yeah, I mean, we can only speculate because I don't know the facts, but I would think it's highly likely that this committee won't exist, but maybe there will be a different body that the mayor will introduce. But I've no knowledge of that. It's pure speculation on my part at the moment. But certainly I can't see it's going to stay in its current form. I wouldn't have thought. Any other comments? No. Well, I think because the city proposed to withdraw the concession, haven't you? That's what was in the publicity. But it's out. Just a minute. It's out to consultation at the moment. But whoever the new mayor is, all the candidates have said that they will continue to fund the concession. So I think that's something that will continue. How they, whether they want to slightly change it or whatever, but that's it. That seems to be the case. So whether they slightly tweak it or whatever, but I think all the candidates have given a similar indication. So I think what will happen to the county consultation is it will probably be a case of, right, we've done the consultation, here are the results of it, and just hand it to the mayor and say, that's the results of the consultation, you decide, basically, when it comes into force.
Jen, do you want me to explain the legal background? bus network on long-time ones by weekends, but there is no equivalent legislation for trams. So it is entirely up to the discretion of local authorities as to whether they fund the extension of bus concession tickets to their tram networks, or to allow concessionary holders in the bus world. If you've got a concessionary pass in London, you can use it in Nottingham, but you cannot use a Nottingham pass on the tram network in Croydon, because there's no legal requirement for TfL to accept on the tram network a bus pass. And so what we've got here is that each of the authorities, including the city, and that's in the which is going to the executive committee later this week, is that next week is that the concession all the elements which are discretionary, and trams, the concession on the tram is classed as discretionary because it's not mandated by law.
Yeah.
That's why it has to go for the consultation as to whether that could potentially be withdrawn.
Yeah, I think it's probably a question really, a bit like the national rail card. Why don't we just have a national scheme that could be used on any system, and make it much easier, wouldn't it? Sandra, do you want to?
Yeah, just on that point, I think it's it does show how slow national government are in accommodating new modes of transport, such as trams, because this is an obvious extension of what should have been bus concessions should obviously move to trams and national legislation. But I do worry that with the removal of that, we'll end up reducing the amount of people that may use the tram, because I know for people that live in the city, they use it really quite easy to get around. And I am concerned that another thought of mine is that when the mayoral and the combined authority comes in, my concern is that if we start by saying, oh, but the mayor will do this, how much are we then giving to the mayor to take over when we've been doing it for ages, and how much of that money then becomes just stuff that is going on, there's nothing new that the mayor can do, because it's all just, we'll pass that to the mayor because obviously pressures, and it's not technically statutory. And that's just a concern I have, is that the mayor and the combined authority should be a new, fantastic, amazing point of investment. And if we end up just pushing things to the mayor that we've done for years, will that leave us in a position where nothing comes out of it?
The legislation for combined authority and the mayor, it's already been decided, it's already been done. So it's not a question of us pushing it to them. The legislation says the mayor will now decide, etc., etc. So,
No, yeah, absolutely. But
it's taken out of our hands, really.
No, understood. Yeah.
So I think the best way is if we just say whether you could just maybe do some investigation to clarify exactly what the mayor will be responsible for in terms of the issues that we discussed, because it's difficult for us to have any specific recommendations that commit us to something that we're not empowered to do. So I think that's the first starting point, is just to check to see what are the powers that are going to be used in the first place. Okay.
It's worth stating that the mayor will provide an opportunity here, because at the moment there is not a figurehead for rail within this area. So all the local authorities struggle. So most local authorities do not anymore have a dedicated rail officer. At the moment, we're very much reliant on the fact we all contribute to East Midlands councils, and they've got a dedicated rail officer, and we've got Midlands Connect. So Midlands Connect are doing a lot of the lobbying from Network Rail, whatever you want to call them these days. You've got the issue that there is no additional funding, so their RNet programme is virtually non-existent, and it is all down to this lobbying opportunity, which we've been trying to get Midlands Connect to to take the lead on, but they're looking at more the transformational changes and not the local level stuff. But the mayor will give us a figurehead for lobbying for rail, which should be a benefit.
Right.
Yes, can I come back on a couple of
Well,
points?
yeah, we're starting to go around in circles.
But,
Here.
well, no, I mean, if we can, at the next committee, have a kind of a joint report from county and city on what we think we should be working on, as best you can, because I know you have to work out certain diplomatic things, and some people don't always agree with it. I mean, but I think we should be getting clearer about how we're going to decide what net extension we campaign for, because I just think it's so obvious that we need, if we're going to get a third phase of net, we need to go east. You've got to relieve the pressure on Gedling, on West Bridgeford, and on the east of the city. The other point I just wanted to make, in case people have missed it, Network North, I think about a third of the proposals are actually for the south of England. Am I wrong? It's quite a significant sum. So there is a sense in which we should not so much say.
Chair, I couldn't possibly comment on anything that
But it is that sense of we've got to be able to campaign for the lot as well as saying what our priorities are, because it is a nonsense what's coming back. People are saying, oh, people don't travel as much anymore, and then saying, but I'd like the road between Derby and Stoke improved. Yeah, where's that come from? You know, it's bizarre. We've got to get the mass transport going to tackle what's happening in the COP.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on.
Can we have a report for this?
Well, some clarification. I think we've got to be careful that we don't have a lot of work done on a report that, until we know exactly what's happening to this committee, we don't want to have a lot of work done on a report that's then suddenly, no pun intended, comes up against the buffers because the committee doesn't exist anymore. So
I think you did intend a pun there.
well, maybe I did, but I'm glad you noticed. So just some clarification, I think, for now, until we've established exactly what the mayoral responsibilities are. Okay, right, so item 7, let's move on to Jacob. Is that you, Matt?
Yeah. That's me, Chair, and hopefully I can be fairly brief on this, as the report is relatively self-explanatory. The current stage of the Greater Nottingham strategic plan is that we've completed the preferred approach to strategic logistics consultation. We're going through the responses that we've had to that now. We will combine those responses with the responses to the preferred approach consultation that took place at the beginning of this year, and prepare a draft plan for formal publication, Regulation 19 publication, later next year, probably around late spring, early summer. And just in terms of those councils that aren't party to the Greater Nottingham local plan, very quick update is that Ashfield have now published their Regulation 19 version of their local plan. That's out to consultation as we speak. And Erewash Borough Council did call a special council meeting to consider withdrawing their local plan from examination, but they were issued a direction notice from the Secretary of State preventing them from doing that, and so the examination is still programmed to go ahead in January. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. I don't think there'll be any comments with it. No. Okay, thanks. That's noted. Thanks for that. Which takes us to our work programme, which, well, partly that depends on the future of this body, doesn't it, Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In fact, members have already touched upon this already in the meeting. Looking ahead is somewhat difficult because we know with the decision to approve the formation of the combined authority, there may well be a change of responsibility for transport matters, obviously. And officers wish to reflect on the future of the meeting, this meeting with in a matter of in the new year, and potentially present a report back to the next meeting, which is scheduled for March. So we think a bit of a we are entering a new era, really, in terms of government in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire with the combined authority. We're not sure of the scope and role for the joint committee going forward. We hear what members have said about their support for a kind of meeting, but how that is held, I think we need to just reflect on further, and bring a report back to the next meeting. So, in fact, officers have already convened a meeting for the new year to discuss that further. So we're not presenting a work programme beyond March at this stage.
Yeah, and I think, well, the first item there on the work programme, which is what you've just been talking about, and so, I mean, that's going to be critical, isn't it, to deciding how anything goes forward. And very conveniently, I think 22nd of March is just before Purdah will probably start for the mayoral, so we hopefully have got some of that clarification by then as to how things will be proceeding beyond the election. So that will really give a pointer to what happens in the future, won't it? So I don't think there's a lot of point in discussing the detail too much until we know that. Okay. Right. With that, sorry, Sam.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to make the point on record that obviously it's my first meeting here, and I have a slight concern that we are wildly gender imbalanced. I know that is not a responsibility of any authority in the whole, but I think it might be worth noting that we are all men in here, and also I think we've got a gender and ethnicity issue in terms of lack of representation here. So I'm minded to recommend to members to take that back to the relevant parts of your.
Well, there's so few members that are part of it. A, that would be very difficult to achieve, and B, it might be almost the last meeting of it. So
Absolutely understand. Just wanted to make sure that it was noted, because it's something that I'm trying to ensure that the city does better. And coming to a meeting in the county, I think it's important we do it the same as well.
yeah, actually, well, to be fair, I don't know how to put this. You might be the cause of part of that, because I think your predecessor did help with gender and ethnicity, if I recall, or one of them did anyway. It hasn't always been the case.
No, absolutely. I wouldn't ever. I'm just suggesting from an outlooker's point of view, for any of the residents that we have across the combined two authorities, would look at this and go, maybe there's a slight issue. But I take your point entirely.
Yeah. Okay. Right. With that, everybody, it's nearly Christmas. Have a good Christmas and New Year, and hopefully we might try and be refreshed for the new year and ongoing from there. And with that, I'll declare the meeting closed. Thanks.